Welcome back to another Kray video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any videos. And for people really into the Krays, join our private Facebook group, Krays Crime Lords of London, where you can find stuff possibly unavailable anywhere else. We're an established group and very friendly. The link is in the YouTube description section.
Each area of London had its own organised crime group, if you like. It was neighbourhood based. They made their money from thieving, from stealing, and also from various kinds of extortion. The big area to plunder immediately after the war was the West End of London. The Krays were really seen as likely lads who were coming through. These were highly marketable young men who proved themselves as local men of violence in the East End of London and were being spotted by these elder statesmen of crime as being possible cohorts.
They were in fact spot men, really. Originally, the story is that they were hired by Spot to defend him at the spring meeting at Epsom in, I think 1955.
I can remember Ronnie saying, we're going to the races. I said, what do you know about the races, Ron? He said, well, not a lot. He said, but we could soon learn, and we're going with Jack Spot. And he loved the idea.
He was a funny man. He used to sort of hold court in the Cumberland Hotel at Marble Arch, sort of very much like sort of one of the old-time mafiosi with a sort of fedora hat on and a smart suit and having his boots polished. The Spot was on the decline. The men he'd had defected to Hill, where the pickings were an awful lot better, and he eventually quarrels with a man called Albert Dimes, who was the Hill number 2, and they had a celebrated fight in Frith Street where they cut each other to ribbons.
I've gone round one day and there's Jack Spot, this man who Ronnie was in awe of, sitting in their kitchen with, Lord knows, cuts on his face like nothing, Oh, he looked up at me and he was sitting down and he said, I'll be back, son, I'll be back. And I thought, you won't be coming back anywhere. You're finished, mate. Your days of being #1 gangster are over.
Spot fell right out of the picture. What there was left of him.
While Reggie might say that Billy Hill was his role model because he was smarter, he was, in his opinion, cleverer than Spot, and he was also, in Reggie's opinion, more like Reggie than Ronnie.
Billy Hill was the great example to them, because Billy Hill was one of the few people actually, having spent 17 years in the nick, he did finally make a bit of money out of crime.
Billy Hill was a user. Simple and straightforward as that.
They was being used to use violence on other people for a pittance. And they wasn't satisfied with having a pittance. They said, well, we'll have the lot.
There was a big meeting held in Clerkenwell where it was decided what certain people would get, what Jack Spot was getting previous. After that particular meeting, the twins was the governor of everything.
Ron was pathetic. He had a massive breakdown. He was certified, and Reg always had to look after him, you see.
Wife and Ron got 3 years at the Old Bailey, and he went in Winchester prison, and whilst there, he had some trouble, he got certified, and so he went to Long Grove, which is a mental hospital. And he decided that he wanted to have it away from there. He told me on a visit.
When Ronnie was incarcerated in a mental hospital, there was a switch between Reggie and Ronnie. Ronnie walks out when Reggie's come to do the visiting, and no one seems to notice that Ronnie isn't Reggie, and vice versa for some time.
and police were called. But I never saw any police because they was called before I was called enough to see the doctor. And he said, well, you're very fortunate. I can't do anything about this. He said, but you brought trouble on your own head, which I suppose I did in the long run because it didn't work out. Because I wasn't on any medication, so eventually had to go back to Longbarrow. But he hit all the papers at the time, so he enhanced their reputation a bit.
Why Reggie done what he done to get him out of there was crazy to begin with, because Ronnie needed medical attention. He's always needed medical attention.
Reg started the Double R Club. The Double R means Ron and Reg in Walthamstow, and Reg became, even then, very keen on celebrities.
Well, it was a big ass, that's all the Double R was. I mean, it wasn't like a club at all, it was just 2 big rooms. And yet Reggie always loved that because it was the very first club that they'd actually owned.
Esmeralda's was in Knightsbridge, and I think this was one of the things that led to their downfall, because they really, well, they were off their manner.
It was a big mistake because instead of leaving it alone and keeping away from there and just popping their head in now and again, they took the East End to Knightsbridge.
You had second cousins to the Queen and all that going in there, all high people, all with something wrong with them. I'm sorry, you know, every one of them had something wrong with them. They liked boys, or if it was a woman, she'd be a lesbian or something like that, you know, all cranky, all a lot of them. But Ronnie, you couldn't sit him amongst them type of people. You know, he would stick out like a sore thumb.
And I suppose the Knightsbridge set, they found it amusing to start with seeing all these scar faces and paid uglies roaming around. But they're sitting down with a East End cab driver and a lord and lady, somebody sitting the other side, you know. And then of course, when a few checks were made out and they were a bit late being honoured, the twins wouldn't 2 or 3 weeks go by and they would be around putting pickaxes through Rolls Royces and things like that, you know.
The next club they had was the Kentucky, which they had a big splash there, a lot of celebrities there. They knew one thing about them, they did know a lot of good top celebrities, you know what I mean? Judy Garland, as you know, all them sort of people.
It was always packed 7 days a week, but again, the twins never earned no money out of clubs. Because the simple reason is everyone would come in, they was buying drinks for.
They put their money about. They had no sense with money. Money was worthless to them. They just spent it as fast as they got it and give it away. If you said to him, I like your watch, he'd take it off and give it to you. He was so generous in that way.
For Ronnie, it was never really about money. For Reggie, it was really about money. Reggie wanted to be an adept businessman. Ronnie would never allow it. Ronnie would go to where they were working and he would take whatever he wanted, whatever it was, right? If they had £200 in the till, he'd give me £150.
They had loads of clubs in the finish like pissholes, not like clubs at all, you know? Unauthorised spills where the gambling went on.
And they had what Albert used to call the milk round. He used to go and collect the money from all these places. And of course, then they go in, when the Americans come over, the Americans expected to pay a little bit of, I don't know what you call protection money, but it was just, sort of favour money to keep all their nuisances out. If they had any problems and knockers and upsetting their clubs, they could call on the twins.
One big payment was a quarterly payment from the colony in Mayfair, paid by the mafia, and they was paying, I think, £3,500 a quarter to keep us out. They thought we were too thuggish. Mafioso talking like that.
It suddenly clicked in my mind. Ronnie thinks it's George Raft. And Ronnie, I think, was in love with him. But everything he did, his way of dressing, his gestures, his way of speaking, everything's George Raft, and that's what he thought he was.
And there they all were in this background of 60s culture booming around the West End and the Chelsea set and this whole area. And they were this weird pair. And the weirdest of the two was Ron, and he became weirder and weirder and more popular, more and more talked about. Well, popular, he was talked about, he was feared, he was an unbelievable character.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see you there soon.
Leave a like and subscribe.